Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Zenitsu, and we are back with another Digimon video. So today, we actually have a little bit of metadata to go over. Yay! More metadata just is more metadata. Just lets us know where the current status of the game actually is as the meta continues to evolve and develop. So when it comes to the latest regional, that was the September regional in Europe, and we have some decks to go over. It is a little unfortunate that Bandai themselves didn't give us anything past the top 2 decks, but we have Digimon Meta coming in clutch, giving us at least the top 4 decks, which is what Bandai generally likes to do, except they've been cutting it to top 2 decks for the past couple of events. I don't exactly know why there's that inconsistency, but whatever. It is what it is, and we eventually get a little bit more data, so I don't know if Eggman events or anything else is actually going to get anything past the top 4, but we at least have something to go over. So when it comes to this event, I have no idea in terms of the overall details and matchup spread. We really don't get a whole lot of metadata, which is unfortunate because that stuff is fun to actually take a look at and see how decks are converting and what the play rate of specific decks are. So that gives us a better picture on how the meta is actually developing, but we take whatever we can get at this point because Bandai really doesn't like releasing any kind of data. It's really weird and awkward, but regardless, when it came to the deck that actually won this event, it was Galactimon, and in second place, we have Machindra. So before we dive into these decks, if you're enjoying this type of content and you want to see more, make sure to always leave that like and hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you can stay up to date when I upload or go live next. And if you want, feel free to tell me your thoughts about the event, if you participated in it or not, or know any additional information, or just have something to say about any of the decks. Feel free to tell me in the comments below. So with that out of the way, let's get into the first place deck, which is going to be Galactimon. So Galactimon is in the camp of what Machindra is essentially trying to do, where let's just make this big uninteractable Digimon and then kind of just try to control the field and win the game that way. So as far as how Galactimon is doing that, it is mostly thanks to the Ragnarok Cannon option. So between Galacti and Ragnarok Cannon, those two cards are going to try to delete what's on the opponent's field, and then once the opponent has nothing on their field to delete, then Ragnarok Cannon is just going to rip through all of their security all at once, except for the very last one, and that's why Galactimon is going to be able to swing, take that last one, then use a card to be able to unsuspend him, so then he could actually OTK and win the game from there. Then we are going to be utilizing the 2 different Destromons because the Digicross one, being able to Digicross from the trash, is incredibly powerful, on top of the fact that this is the Destromon that has very strong tamer removal, and there's a lot of decks in the game that are currently relying super heavily on their tamers to be able to do some good heavy lifting in terms of the synergies and mechanics that those decks are interacting with. So shutting those out will essentially limit those decks' capabilities. So it's nice that they're utilizing that tool, and then they're utilizing the new tool to be able to add some extra protections, because that was one of the deck's biggest weaknesses before, is it had protection, just not like the protections that matter to be able to keep the Digimon around a little bit longer, and this Destromon adds a little bit more of those to make the Digimon even harder to deal with. Then the fact that obviously going up into these cards is super easy, and your Venmons are going to be able to reduce your Digivolution costs, and you have multiple ways to be able to stack your Digimon with a whole bunch of Venmons, means it shouldn't be super hard to get into either of these cards, which means it shouldn't be super hard to get into a Galactimon either. Whether it's through Digicross or normal Digivolution, whether it's setting up your Zenith or just Digivolving, there's just a lot of ways to be able to get inheritables into your Digimon and utilize them effectively to search out your other cards of your deck and try to formulate that OTK. Alright, and then when it comes to second place, we have a Machindra deck. So this is the purple toolboxy Machindra stuff. So it is A little bit different than the DM variant that is also pretty popular when it comes to the two major ways that Machindra wants to be played. So the big thing that Machindra is doing, utilizing the purple low end, is obviously trying to gain as much value from your rookies being deleted as you possibly can. So not only does your egg allow you to basically discard a card and draw two, it's more specifically your level 5s, which we're running in absolute abundance of, but it also is going to have a rookie that's going to have a nice draw on top of its delete ability, so that way we could try to fill up our trash and draw cards as quickly as humanly possible, with Ukomons helping flesh things out because it not only helps turbo our raising area, but we also have an Ukomon to gain us memory and an Ukomon to be able to allow us to dig deeper into our deck to find all of the cards and parts and pieces that we need. Then we do have another rookie that's kind of acting like the promo Ukomon, where it's just helping us with our memory generation, ideally out of raising, or if it's just a Digimon that's going to be sitting passively on the field because the opponent might not have a way to be able to get rid of it, or we're just not going to be swinging with it. Either way, the extra memory is super valuable because the whole goal and intended game plan for this iteration is just actually hard slamming Machindra. So Machindra has the nice assembly ability to be able to tuck a whole bunch of different Digimon underneath him to be able to give him a nice cost reduction. And then we're going to pair that with some other cost reductions, ways to gain memory, and ways to kind of set us up to be able to make trying to play out our Machindra as efficient as possible. So we have that on top of a slew of toolboxing level 5s, all to try to figure out what is the best card that we need at any given moment, with a couple of similar abilities to try to see them more consistently while having different names, so that way our Machindra can be as effective at any given moment, depending on the different level 5s that we're going to be seeing. So that's pretty cool there, with our analog mans just helping set everything up, which is always nice and good to see, on top of the fact that we do have a lot of different level 5s that we're leveraging, mostly just some of the DM stuff because the DM stuff is still incredibly strong, and we even have like some extra security attack pluses, extra DP, extra de-digivolve, extra memory gaining, so we just have a slew of different abilities, and it seems like the unique approach that this player decided to take is going to be a couple of the DM Ogremons, most likely for some floodgate sniping, because this is a way to be able to not only just utilize the training mechanic in case you do want to try to digivolve more traditionally, but also when he's going to be attacking, you also can just utilize his inheritables to be able to delete low-level Digimon, which is really good because that'll clear the way for Machindra to actually come down as cheaply and efficiently as he needs to, in order for the whole deck to work and function. Then it's also going to be leveraging the ever so classic Chaos and Chaos X combo to digivolve on top of Machindra, so that way your big boss monster is going to be as powerful as humanly possible, with a Chaos Dramon X being a way to also just increase your inheritables. So that's kind of the big end result of what this deck is trying to do in a nutshell, and because it is like Galactimon trying to be this big uninteractable boss monster that has a slew of different abilities and a lot of different toolboxing potential with those abilities to be able to counteract and handle various different situations that the game is going to be throwing at it. Hopping over to third place now, we have the Purple Hybrids deck. So I'm guessing that the eggs are just the traditional eggs between the Demimera and the Cupid, so that way they can just on delete be able to discard cards and do various other things, whether it's gain memory or drawing a card. Either is perfectly fine, because this deck just wants to discard cards and fill up its trash so it could actually utilize its trash, just like most other purple decks in the entire game. Actually, it's kind of like a lot of decks in the entire game. Purple just tends to have some of the better tools to be able to do all of that. But as far as what this deck is doing, it's literally nothing we haven't seen from Purple Hybrids. It's just using Koichis, and it's using the Dusk and Velgar loop to be able to control and aggress and keep something on the field, and continue to use that loop to be as oppressive as possible, while giving the opponent as little to interact with as possible, because you don't have to necessarily sit on your rookies in order to gain value. I mean, sitting on your Floodgates is still pretty good at trying to slow the opponent down, but we also have the Ukos and Gabu to be able to try to passively gain some additional benefits when we move our stuff out of raising. The Ukos obviously is going to be either gaining us memory or drawing us some additional cards, and the Gabu is kind of just acting as extra copies of Promo Uko, just obviously not as good. But regardless, it's just, again, leveraging the fact that we don't necessarily need to Digivolve on top of our rookies in order to aggress, and our rookies are just there to try to slow the opponent down, chip at the opponent, or accelerate ourselves up, depending on which rookies we're actually seeing. Then the deck is also still kind of just utilizing a lot of the same tools that the deck tends to use. So it's going to be using Nidhogg for some extra memory gain, Louis because we're playing with the Ukos and that adds to the overall aggression. We do have some cute memory manipulation cards in the form of Mimi and Keenan. But speaking of accelerating the deck's overall game plan, that's why the deck also is going to be using Arrestdramon Superior Mode, because we don't necessarily have to use Velgermon to be able to delete itself and set us up. We could just leave it alone and use it for either promo to delete the Velger or Digivolve into an Arrestor, or if we don't have the Velger and we just have the Dusk, then we could still Digivolve into an Arrestor, which is pretty decent because Arrestor is kind of like the Omnifactor where he's just an extra attack. Plus he's also going to make himself above 13k for Gallantmon to be able to delete, and we're still going to be running the BT13 Gallantmon because why not? These two are basically glued at the hip at this point for just a literal combo of free additional attacks and potential deletions. So yeah, it makes sense why this deck is still doing good. It's one of the best aggressive decks in the game while trying to either hose on some of the opponent's potential strategies and game plan or give them nothing to interact with while you just do all of the aggression whenever you're set up. And that similar sentiment is exactly what Megidramon is doing. So Megidramon is just not taking the hybrid approach of doing this, and instead Megidramon is just taking the stack approach of doing this. So instead of all the tamers, we're just replacing all of those with memory gaining and consistency tools on top of a couple of little tech cards here and there. But for the most part, it's still just trying to do the exact same thing, where you're trying to go up into a Digimon and then use the Digimon to kind of loop itself. So Dusk and Velger is using those two cards with the BT18 Koichi to be able to formulate that loop, and Megidramon is doing a very similar thing with obviously Growlmon X Antibody. So between Growlmon X Antibody and Megidramon, you're definitely going to be punching really hard and then playing out a couple of additional bodies, and then you could do different things with those bodies depending on what you're actually going to be playing out. So you could either play out like a Rush Guilmon to be able to get some extra damage. You could play out any normal Guilmon and try to Digivolve up into another stack. You could even just Digivolve into a Gankoomon Promote for an additional Rusher. Then you also have the Wargrowlmon X Antibody to be able to not only just try to have more ways to delete the opponent's Digimon, but Security Attack Plus and Protection is also two very relevant factors on top of the fact that they're using Skullgreymon as another good anti-meta tool. So yeah, it just makes sense because they're doing the exact same thing as what Purple Hybrids is doing, just a little bit different because, again, you have your Gallantmons that are glued at the hip, and then this is just allowing us to be able to utilize the medieval Gallantmon because it's still within the Gallantmon archetype, which this deck is playing a little bit heavier into, but the end goal is just punch really hard, replace the Digimon, trigger all of your on-deletes, play out more Digimon, and then just continue to try to rush the opponent out in a single go. Digging a little bit deeper into this event, because, you know, we already had a little bit of information from Digimon Meta, we actually have the rest of the information as far as top 8 breakdown, so huge shout-outs to them, and if anyone is wondering, it was the Victory Road regional that had around 256 players. So as far as the rest of top 8, we have 2 Omnimons and 2 Gankoomons, literally alternating between Omnimon Genku, Omnimon Genku. So yeah, I'm not reasonably expecting these decks to be that much different from either A, each other, or B, anything we've ever seen out of what these decks are capable of doing. So going over the first one really quickly, it is utilizing the black egg, so that means it is the more CS focused version. So that's why it has the Mirai, and it's still just trying to utilize like Nokia and ties to be able to set up your warp plays into your level 6s to then DNA into your level 7 and try to combo off and control the field with your level 7 and make sure that your field is so oppressively strong and everything on the opponent's field is basically removed that they reasonably wouldn't be able to make a comeback. And this deck is still utilizing Alter B as a nice alternative win condition, which is a really good card to consider. Then when it comes to the Gankoomon deck, so this is the first of the Gankoomons. It's literally exactly what we've seen before, just a couple of floodgates, some Ukomon, Sistermon, and Huckmon to basically act as the good value engine, on top of the Bauhuck being the only level 4, and this deck is actually electing to use a Wargrowlmon Ace, which is a very good card, but it's also teching in the Crimson Blaze, and they are utilizing the Digimon Emperor tech for not only just the mirror, but for various other decks as well. And yeah, it's just the same deck that we've seen, just trying to play out a whole bunch of Digimon and then line up a cheap Gankoomon to Digivolve into Ganku X, give everything immunity, and then try to keep giving everything immunity and make it very hard for the opponent to do anything about your Digimon as they're trying to floodgate and control the opponent. So yeah, swapping over to the other Omnimon deck, the last of them, this is kind of just the same thing as what we just saw with the other Omnimon deck. The only like real difference is the fact that they are also going to be running Omnimon X, just because both Alter B and Omnimon X are probably just extra win con cards to try to close out games a little bit faster, digivolving on top of our Omnimons. Then they are using Gravity Crush for some extra memory because they're lower on the Mat and Ties, which I think is an interesting choice because Nokia plus 1 Mat and Tie isn't enough at 3 memory to be able to keep turn off of a warp play. So the Gravity Crush is a cute tech to try to increase your memory capabilities to potentially kill the opponent in a single go, except they're still only running, well, I guess it makes sense because they have the 2 Digimon that are digivolving on top of Omni. So you're going to be trying to start and lead with Alter S, then Alter S will go into a normal Omnimon, and then if normal Omnimon can't finish off the game, then that's where Alter B or X Antibody comes into play. But yeah, it's still essentially the same exact core that we've been seeing out of this deck for a while. And the last Gankoomon deck is, shocker, no real different than literally what we just saw. So yeah, that is going to be the rest of the top 8 for the Victory Road European Regional. So if you enjoyed this type of content, you already know what to do. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Later.